There's going to be a lot of chatter going on today throughout the process. So go ahead and open up chat now while you have a moment before you get engrossed in the conversation. If you would put in the chat where you're located and why you decided to attend today's session. And looks like we have a large crew today and we have more people coming in as we go. We're going to go ahead and get started though for the sake of time. I have a feeling, like I said, this is going to be a lively conversation between our panelists. So we hope you enjoy. Today we're talking about artificial intelligence for teaching and learning. I'm Dr. Kelli Erwin. I am the EPC chair and professional development co-chair for TxDLA. I've been a part of the organization since about 2008, 2009, if my memory serves correctly. So I'm excited to be a part of the team that brings you PD. Dr. Rhonda Blackburn is also part of the team. However, she's not here with us today, but I did want to call her out. She is my partner in crime as we put together professional development opportunities, including our monthly bite-sized learning events. If you are interested, please take a moment to jump into the TxDLA website. We have all sorts of great information there for you. You can see our past webinars that we've done topic-wise. You can see our upcoming webinars and get registered for those. We also have a link to our membership and quite a few other resources on the website. So take a moment. We have one of the best memberships around. Like I said, I've been with TxDLA since about 2008, and it truly is one of my favorite organizations and favorite conferences to attend. So take a moment and check it out when you get a chance. Like I said, on our webinar page, we do list our upcoming webinars. We have the one for July scheduled and August. July will be talking about a purpose-built infrastructure for discovery and learning, and it's the acronym LEARN. So sign up to get more details about that. We're excited about that one. And then in August, we'll shift focus and look at basically, it's a gameful approach to instructional design. How do you bring gamification and gaming into your classroom? So check those out and register to join us. We also have our Fall Leadership Conference, which is an amazing event. We have had in-person events and we've had virtual events, and regardless of which one we've had over the years, they are amazing learning experiences. For those that attend, I know I didn't become involved in the leadership of TxDLA until after I attended my first fall workshop. And it, like I said, it was an amazing experience. Check it out. The information is on our website. It'll be in Fredericksburg this year, so we're all really excited about that event in November. But today we're here for a different purpose. Today we are here to talk about artificial intelligence for teaching and learning. The panelists got together and talked last week, and we threw together a Padlet for you to kind of go and put tools that you've been using. It's going to be a shared Padlet. We are not going to close this Padlet or turn it off after the webinar. This is truly a chance for you to go add to. There are different categories that we've set, so you can go in, look at planning, instruction and practice, tutoring, research, and then just other off to the side. And it looks like we already have some tools in here that our panelists have added. Please go in when you get a moment and add the tools that you're using. I'll drop the link in chat in just a moment for everybody to have access to. But it is the bit.ly at the bottom of the screen, or you can use the QR code, whichever works best for you. And without further ado, we will go ahead and get started with our panelists. So the way we have this designed today is for our panelists truly just to have a conversation about some specific topics related to artificial intelligence. As we go through this process, if it sparks conversation or you have questions that you want to ask, definitely drop them in the chat. We have a large group today, so we are not unmuting, just for the sake of the conversation of the panelists. Our plan is, once we get towards the end of the session, to pause and try to go through and answer some of the questions. So like I said, if you have questions and you think about them, drop them in the channel. But let's go ahead and get started. Yes, I saw the comment about the bit.ly. I'm going to put that in the chat in just a second. While we get started, we're going to go ahead and kick it off and let our panelists introduce themselves. So Brenda, we'll start with you. Oh, you're muted. Hold on.
Got it.
There you go.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. I see we have people from all over Texas, K-12, 2-year, 4-year colleges. So welcome to our session. My name is Dr. Brenda Quintanilla, and I'm a regional manager for the Center for Learning Innovation at Houston Community College. I've been here for about 5 years. I've worked in ed tech in higher ed and K-12 for probably close to 23 years now. That's kind of been my passion in my career, and I have worked with faculty and also with Texas Distance Learning Association as a past president, but really interested in artificial intelligence right now and how it affects teaching and learning and how we can use it in education.
So I'm Chris Bigenho, Dr. Chris Bigenho, and I am the director of the Virtual Learning Academy in Lewisville ISD. We are a supplementary program supplying online learning for high school students all across Texas, mostly our own students here in Lewisville. Been in education 35 plus years, also teach as an adjunct professor at A&M Commerce. And in terms of AI, well, actually before that, also to all my K-12 folks out there, I do see a bunch out there, it looks like. I'm also on the board of directors as the director of K-12 for TxDLA, and would love to hear from you and see if we can't grow that constituency as well. There's a lot that we can be talking about. On the AI side of things, when this rolled out back in November last year, we jumped on it right away and started to play. And so you could say that I've always been one to be an early adopter and get in and kind of want to kick the tires and see what things can do. So I have a deep interest in playing around with this tool.
And hi, I'm Ruthanne Rudi Thompson. I am a professor of biology at the University of North Texas, and I'm also the Associate Vice President for Digital Strategy and Innovation and the Executive Director of our Center for Teaching and Learning, known as CLEAR at UNT. As far as AI goes, we are, like all of you, looking into the further aspects of it, as we will talk about today. We all know that AI is not new, but the newer aspects of it and what those things can do in the realm of teaching and learning. Specifically today, I'll talk a little bit about the use of it in research, but also in the higher ed environment.
Great. Thanks, you guys. Appreciate the introductions. And now let's dive into the lively conversation. I must confess, we jumped on a little early and started chatting and decided we were really excited for this session. So here we go. Let's start. The first topic that I want us to think about is really looking at the reality of the timeline associated with artificial intelligence. Things like how quickly it's changing, the generative nature, the social aspect of it, and how AI continues to learn so fast. So I'll open that up to you guys to kind of address as you will.
Once
and make
here.
sure you take yourself off mute.
Yeah, there's not all jump into once. So, AI, we were talking about this earlier. AI is not new. I mean, Alan Turing, and you've heard about the Turing test, and can you be talking to a machine and not know it's a machine and figure it maybe as a human? And that always became known as the Turing test. And that was back in the 40s. So it's been around a long time. It's been a slow development, march forward, but something really interesting happened in last November of 2022, and a new tool was dropped on the world, ChatGPT 3. And when that happened, a bunch of us started getting in there and started playing with this, and it was like an aha moment, And when we started talking, I can speak to our faculty when we mentioned, well, look at what this thing can do. Some of our faculty had interesting, responses, and it was, well, gosh, that guy ought to be taken out tarred and feathered and walked up and down the street, and who came up with that tool. And others are seeing the utility of it. And so, that came out, and then just shortly thereafter, another version came out, which is monumentally better, incrementally much better than the current version that was just released in 3. So this is changing really fast, and it's finding its way into all kinds of tools. it's been around in other tools. And I think some folks here might be able to say more about some of the tools that they've been using or found it in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is interesting that really AI has been kind of, already in our search engines for some time. We have it on our personal devices. Facebook's been using it for quite some time. And really, we haven't thought about the fact that AI has been around us until ChatGPT launched. And so many people were interested. I think some of the interesting facts about GPT and just the fact that it's really the fastest growth app that has reached 1 million users in the shortest amount of time. So for instance, Netflix, for them to come up to 1 million users, it took them almost 3.5 years to get 1 million users. Facebook, it was 8 months, but for ChatGPT, it took 5 days for them to get 1 million users on their account. And that's one of the reasons that it was crashing so much for all of us, right? I know initially when we were all trying to get into it, it wouldn't let people in because it really couldn't handle the number of users that wanted to investigate the product and everything. But because of ChatGPT and because we've all started engaging in AI so much more, it's advanced so quickly because it's learning from us. The vendors who support and create these products are pushing people to create new algorithms. They're hiring more people, they're putting more investments into the type of technology it needs to run these type of systems, which is extremely expensive. And then things like ChatGPT APIs that other people can use and put into their products are now allowing them to also use AI more extensively without really having to support it, but using the APIs. So there's a lot of us using it that's advancing it so quickly. And so now what we have to do is decide, how do we want to use it? Which applications or products are the most appropriate for what we want to do, especially in teaching and learning? And to what extent do we want to adopt that and what that really will look like for the future?
Right. And then there's positives and negatives, right? As with all things, people can use things for good and for bad. So we have faculty that think it's the scourge of the earth, and then we have faculty that are so excited to jump on board. But then there are things you have to think about. We have to think about FERPA, and we have to think about privacy and protection of student information, and all of the issues that surround these things. And so jumping on early has its kind of drawbacks and ramifications, but then waiting also has those drawbacks. And so those are the kinds of things that we want to talk about today. How are some safe ways that you can go about trying some of the new stuff? And then what are some of the ways that you can help your faculty understand, or those that are scared, what are other alternatives that they can use to try to protect themselves? Because all of those things are out there now. But I think the most important thing is we all understand that this is happening. It doesn't matter if we want to or not. We have a lot of faculty at UNT are like, this is it, I'm retiring. I can't do one more advance. But most are really intrigued. Our students are intrigued. I think all of us on this call are intrigued. And so now it's what are we going to do with it?
Kelli, you mentioned that it's social, and Brenda, you talked about how it's learning from us as we put stuff into it. I think, it's one way to think of it is, we all remember Clippy, right? If you're on the Clippy, well, and then the little guy pops up and, hey, you got a problem, you got a question, you seem to be having troubles here, and we got irritated by that. But there's early stage of AI there, and it was learning a little bit. But the thing is the speed at which these systems are learning now and the process. So they're learning from themselves. They're also learning from us, and it's a reward system. So I like to think of it as it's a, was it B.F. Skinner, the classical conditioning, and the idea that if you do what you want me to do, I will give you, I'll give you things, I'll give you props, thank you, that was great, do more of that. And so what we have to think about at times, and this kind of gets to some of the conversation we'll have as we move forward, but we also have to think about when we're asking it and we're giving it props because it did what we asked it to do, depending on the nature of the task, what has it done behind the scenes that we're not aware of? that is the cost of doing the things that we want to do. So it's behaving nicely is what we can see, but we're not necessarily examining what's behind the scenes. And as an example, if I were to say, give me a plan to optimize profit in XYZ, well, it may do so, and it may give me a great plan, but what did it sacrifice in order to allow me to operate, to maximize profit? So it's important, I think, to think that, to remember that these are machines, and we always have to be coming back and putting the human back in to evaluate and not just move forward with what it gives us. So that's that social piece. It's learning from us. We're conditioning it. It's learning from the things we feed in. But we got to always be aware that there's other stuff happening that we need to also be looking at along the way.
Yeah, I think it's a really, sorry, go ahead.
Guys, can I pause you for just 2 seconds? We have a comment in the chat that I want to call out. We do have a lot of people on today. And so can we just pause for a second and maybe talk now instead of later, a little bit about what ChatGPT actually is, and sort of the risks and benefits of it. Chris, you kind of touched on that just a little bit, but our constituency here, as you guys know, is K-12, higher ed, government, business. So we have a wide variety. So maybe if we could just touch on ChatGPT just for a moment, and maybe large language models, in general, and how we teach that literacy and awareness that you've sort of been talking about. I don't know who wants to take that, but.
Well, if I could start with the idea that this is a black box.
Yeah.
Right. So the problem with black boxes is you have to be so careful with the data that goes into a black box. And if the data that goes into the black box is not valid data, then what comes out of the black box is also not valid. And so that's why, like Chris was talking about, the human element. With the black box, one of the reasons why it's called that is because you don't know what's going on inside the box. That's why the black is called that. You don't get to see behind the curtain of the magic. So some of the scary parts are you don't know how it came to that conclusion. And even if you ask it how it came to that conclusion, it can hallucinate how it came to that conclusion. And even in ChatGPT-4 and et cetera, it's still learning from us and the millions of users that are using it. And so those are some of the cautions. Now, some of the faculty that I have don't want the students to know that, because that's how they're able to catch that they're cheating, because students are not aware that ChatGPT is not aware. And so they're able to catch them in that way. But eventually it's going to become more and more literate in its own limitations. But that was one thing that I wanted to add is this knowledge of the idea of the black box.
Absolutely.
The real limitation is it only has data up to the year 2021. It doesn't actually even have current information. So if you ask it something about anything after 2021, it will tell you it cannot provide that information. But really the way these products work, like ChatGPT, is that it actually is just looking through all of the content that it has been trained to read through, and it has a ton of data that it's been given to look through. And it just logically picks words from that information to complete the response that it wants to give you. So it's been trained enough to know what the next logical sequence of wording would be to provide you with an answer. And I think that it hallucinates sometimes because it's picking the wrong words, or it doesn't provide us with the right site or reference that we want, because it's not really reviewing articles for us. It's looking through just data that it has, and it comes up with a response, and then it'll give you a citation or something that may not be a valid citation. You would have to be more specific and have it review specific articles to cite those articles. And so sometimes I think that we might give it more credit than it's worth. It really can only provide us with the responses to the information it has, right? And it does that by looking through all of the data. So ChatGPT is really a chat bot that responds to us by looking through its data with the most relevant responses. For those who are not familiar with it, there's a couple of iterations of ChatGPT. We have ChatGPT 3, and then there's another version, ChatGPT 4, that was launched a couple of months later that has a pay-for version. So it's $20 a month. That version actually has more current data. So if you want a better response, you get to pay for a better response. And so one of the things that a lot of folks are talking about is equity in the use of artificial intelligence. If you have access to a better form of AI, or you're able to pay for a better form of AI, or your college provides you better tools, you have, better resources than maybe a student who's in a school district who can't afford these types of tools. So equity is also a big topic now about the type of information and data that people have access to based on what they're using with artificial intelligence. And so I think that's also really important when we think about these tools, and about who's using the tools. And whether we can afford it, or who can afford it, or if you want to afford to do it. The other thing we want to think about is there's a lot of other AI tools that aren't ChatGPT. I mean, people have designed and developed quite a few applications that we're going to kind of give you a few. And hopefully, if you have some, you're putting it into that Padlet site, because we're going to end up with a really nice resource for everybody. But what this reminds me of, and I know we're not to this part of our conversation yet, but I was thinking about this the other day, but I know our K-12 folks probably remember when iPads became really popular, right? And like the thing was to get an iPad cart. Everybody wanted an iPad cart because there were a lot of applications that Apple had that we could use with our students. And so we would come up with all type of resources, look at the applications, do a lot of vetting, because just because there was an app on an iPad did not mean that it followed the privacy standards for students and things like that, FERPA and things like that. And for me, it's kind of like the same thing. The more I start looking at different applications that are using AI, I get the same feel that we're going to be doing app vetting. We're going to look at how we can combine these applications to create other products. One of the things that we used to look at is like app smashing. If you went to some conferences, people would be doing presentations on how to smash apps together to come up with other products. And this was like the cool thing. Well, I can see this with AI app smashing being one of the next things of how we're going to talk about using some of these products in education. And so I think that's the exciting part. Even though we have ChatGPT and it can give us responses and write papers and things like that, there's a lot of other products that we can use to help our students learn. They can help us as educators create content, and just assist students, but in the big picture, the most important part, I think, are the humans, the people who are choosing what they think would be the most relevant for teaching and learning. Just like any tool that we have in our toolbox, which we always talk about, we don't want to use it if it's not worthwhile, right? We're not just going to rely on AI to be the teacher. We as educators will choose which tools will best help our students learn the content that we know that they need to learn. And so that's part of the exciting part, is that there's a lot of innovation and a lot of discovery that we can do with these applications. And so that's the part that I'm hoping educators will embrace more when we talk about artificial intelligence.
Brenda, I want to kind of jump off from that comment, because you're making me think about whether it's K-12, higher ed, business, government, whatever the learning entity is, right? We have to have policies in place that keep, our users safe, that keep our information safe. And I just posted a comment in the chat a second ago about, your personal identifiable information. Well, that may mean you personally, but also means your business, your students, your company, there's all sorts of things that sort of fall under that heading. So if each of you would maybe just kind of address how in your environment you've handled dealing with establishing policies, looking for policies, using ChatGPT or some other AI tool to help you write a policy. So maybe if we could kind of switch to that part of the conversation, that'd be great.
So I'll go ahead and kick that off from the K-12 side. Not every district is the same, but I can tell you that obviously data privacy is extremely important, and ChatGTP I'm going to speak specifically to that because that's what I played with the most. And that is, it's a generative pre-trained transformer, works with large language models that will take information that you put in and then spit things out based on what it thinks is the next word in the sequence around the questions you ask. So it's a very complex process, but in the end, you're feeding it stuff. So you really never want to feed it your own personal information. That would be really bad because it's learning from you too. So it's taking that information and using that to store and do things with. But a lot of the apps, I'm going to speak high level. You talk about policy. One of the things that we're always looking at is how do companies treat the privacy of our students, the privacy of our employees, as it relates to the information that feeds into that system, whether it be Canvas, whether it be Twitter. There's one there's one you got to watch. Whether it be some of the basic learning tools we have. Maybe you look at the use of services and standards of service, and you find out that they have limits on 13 and over, or 13 under 13, and all these different things. These are things you got to take into account. And the thing about ChatGTP as a tool, and it's going to be around for a long time, is that it's collecting all this data. Now, as we then put this AI into other systems, so we might say, okay, we're not going to allow our students to use ChatGTP on campus. Well, they're going to use it at home, all right? They're going to use it anyway. So that's going to happen. So you got to acknowledge that and deal with that. That's a whole nother conversation. But at the same time, companies are now embedding this, and we will see this embedded in a lot of tools. So, I think Brenda mentioned Bard earlier. Well, that's, there's Google's version, there's Bard playing, and we're going to see it coming into our office suites. So I know that we already have, there's a new office suite. I haven't played with it yet if anyone has, but it'll basically start to write things for you. I need a cover letter for XYZ. This is the company. This is what I want to do, blah, blah, blah. And it goes and writes it for you through a Microsoft product. So it's going to be embedded into these things. And so when you start to make policy, you could easily begin to make policy that's going to shut down a whole lot of other things, tools that you use on a regular basis. So you're going to have to be careful about the way you make policy when it comes to where AI is going to end up in our productivity tools and our creative tools that we use in education.
And Chris, I'll say that I think that ties to business, industry, to government as well, because I'll just pick on Microsoft for a second. A lot of us use the Microsoft suite of products, and we have Teams, and we have all of these different things. And these companies are starting to build AI into their tools. So that's another piece of the puzzle when we're writing policy. That's such a great point. How do we keep that in mind? Ruthanne, I think you're about to say something.
Well, I was just going to say, at our university, what we've decided to do is leave it at the academic freedom of the faculty. So there are some faculty that want to use it in their courses as a learning tool, and there's some faculty that don't. And so if we make a university policy, then it's going to limit those who want to use it. I saw somebody post something about coding. So if, the computer science faculty want to use it, or the data analytics, or anybody else. So if we make a university policy around it, then it's too restricting for all. So what we've encouraged is that each individual college and department take a look at what they want to do. And there are some that are limiting it, and then there are some that are embracing it, and then writing in their syllabi exactly what their expectations are and what they consider to be academic integrity around the use of the product. But just to back up again, what Chris is saying, the embedding of the products, and I saw someone else put in something about TxRamp. Yeah, all of the tools that we sanction as a university, and some of the tools that we've talked about as far as positive use is concerned, those that deal with student data, those all have to be, the TAQ has to be done, the TxRamp certification has to be done. But ChatGPT itself, it doesn't have to go through that process. It's the training of the faculty who are using it to ensure that students are not inputting any personal information into the tool if it's being used.
Yeah,
Kelli, real quick. Oh, go ahead.
At HCC, we kind of have the same thing. We just had a blanket statement about plagiarism, and that's it,
Yep.
using it and not stating that it's ChatGPT. And then really we left it up to the instructors to decide how they want to integrate it or how they want to use it with their students, or if they are or not going to use it. I think the primary thing that we do suggest, though, is that we want to talk about it. We don't want to not talk about ChatGPT because our students know it's there. It's better to bring it out in the open and to even have students talk in the classroom about how they see themselves using it, or what do they see might be problems with using a product like this. And once you start having open conversation with your students, then you can really decide whether it's worthwhile using them or how you can use it in the classroom. So I think those conversations are really important to have as well.
I wanted to just add on, Kelli, you mentioned the business side of things, and my daughter, she's, I'm going to brag on her for a second. So she's an L3. She's just starting out her third year of law school at UT. And so she's working this summer at a law firm. They all work in the summer. It's not free internships any longer. So they're actually working. And, one of the first things that they did when they got in, they said, hey, by the way, nobody uses ChatGPT. Apparently in the law business, in the law world, there are lawyers early on that started feeding all kinds of information in the ChatGPT to see what it would, to get responses to come out. In doing that, they're violating all kinds of client privilege in doing that. So there are issues that, this seems like a no-brainer, but clearly is putting private information out into the public sphere when you do that. So that's, you have to use it in some wise ways. And you've probably all heard of the story of the lawyer who actually argued a case that it turns out that ChatGPT, in writing the brief, made up, it hallucinated, and it made up. They were real. Here you have a real case number in a real court with real people, but that wasn't those weren't the two people that were against each other, and those weren't the topics, and then none of it existed. So it sounded like a great argument until the opposition went to try and pull those cases and could never find them. And now that judge, or now that, that attorney is at the mercy of the court. So, so you got to use it wisely, but it's a really powerful, interesting tool, and it can be used in some really neat, productive ways. And it can be a time saver as well. As an educator, it can certainly be used in ways that can benefit your life as well as the life of your kids.
So I'm going to share also. I'm going to share the chat just real quick how to cite through APA style ChatGPT or any other AI product if you're planning on doing research, or if you just were curious, like how would I cite it? It's APA style right there for you.
Yeah,
and
that's a good tool. Thank you for sharing that.
And Kelli, I think you're going to drop in the chat. Our faculty development group at UNT did a lit review on some positive case uses of AI to use in the classroom. And so it's a reference that, anyone can take a look at and see if you're interested in using any of those examples.
And bottom line, just remember, regardless of which environment you're using this in, it is information, right? And we need to be literate with the information we use. We need to understand the how, the when, the why that you might use this tool, regardless of which type of artificial intelligence or other tool it is, and even the when not, right? The why not, the how not to. So it kind of all wraps up together in the policies, in the use, in the reality of sort of the changing of technology, which is the digital world that we live in right now. So this has been great. And that kind of leads us into the next thing that I wanted us to talk just a little bit more about, which is really the legal aspects of using it. So Chris, you kind of segued into that a little bit, and then Brenda, the tool that you shared with APA, but what are some of the copyright rules that are out there now? What are some things that we know and don't know, even from the Department of Education or any of the entities that you've worked with that we might be able to share out with the attendees today?
Well, the
Anything
research that
else?
I've done with the copyright, the US Copyright Office is that initially and still primarily, they will not copyright images created by artificial intelligence, because their standing is that they will only copyright items that were created by a human through intellectual development. So writing a prompt and getting an AI image generator to create an image to them does not justify, using enough creativity. It's actually a machine creating the imagery by using other images that it finds on the internet. Now, they have changed their standing recently to where they said that they will consider copywriting things that have been created by artificial intelligence if there is sufficient evidence that a human put in the effort to create the final product and to adjust those products. So one of the examples might be if you do prompting, a couple of types of prompting with an image creator, and then you take that image into Photoshop and you modify the image, or you use other products to make it more unique and individual through human creativity, they will consider copywriting those images. But otherwise, they won't copyright anything that a computer is involved in creating like that. The only other thing is, though, even though they will not copyright images, it doesn't mean that you can't sell those images and profit from them. You just don't own them. They're like a Creative Commons item, but you could still put them on a t-shirt and sell that t-shirt on eBay or wherever you wanted to. You just don't own that image and you can't copyright that image.
Right, and in research, if you use anything from ChatGPT, you are required to list that in the article. And you don't assign it, you don't add it as an author, but you are required. Same thing if you use anything when you're writing for a grant proposal for NSF, or if any products that you come out with NSF, you are required to make a statement. In the science apps that I also added for Elicit and Cite, they also talk about adding that in. If you use those, that you have to add that in, that you use those products to achieve your goals. So it's not a citation. You can't cite them, you can't give them credit, but you are required to at least document that you are using those products.
So we were talking this morning as a team, my team here, around some course design stuff, and we had an interesting conversation. So with on a use case scenario, you're designing a course and you have some materials that are written at a very high level, and these are good materials, but your students' reading level is much lower. I'm sure it's not a problem anyone else has, but we certainly have that and see that. And so how do you deal with that? And it's like, well, ChatGPT, let's hold on a second. If we could take 2 paragraphs of this very dense writing, drop it into ChatGPT, and then give it instructions, and we're talking about a tool. By some of the early questions, clearly there are some who don't know what ChatGPT is. Really encourage you to go and play with it, because you really aren't going to know until you play with it, honestly. But and it's not dangerous to play with, so just don't put your personal info in there, but go play with it. But when you begin to learn how to instruct it and to do things, I can get it then to take that really dense material. I didn't write that material. That's someone else wrote that dense material. And I can say, ChatGPT, give that to me on an 8th grade reading level. I can set a Lexile level and it will go ahead and hit that Lexile level. When you pull that out and take a look at it, it will have the information, the gist of that more complex passage, but now it's readable by someone who's really struggling with their language. Question is, where's the law stand with that? So this is where, we've jumped the shark. We go, where does the law stand with that? And there isn't. I mean, it's no longer that source material. It's something completely, and I didn't write it, the machine wrote it. But I tell you what, what do we have? We have 126 people on this right now. If 126 of us took that exact same passage and ran it through and said, give us an 8th grade, we're all going to get a slightly different version of that passage. And none of us are going to have the identical passage. So when you think about from a use case, it sounds, hey, this might be really good. We may start to build it and use this as a way to level some of the language, the lexile levels that exist, so that we can get our reading to it. But it does beg the question, there are going to be some cases that will not be answered until they're challenged in court.
Yeah. I think if you add on to that too, Chris, the fact that it's iterative. So you could then say, you've now changed it to an 8th grade level, and then you could say, I want the tone to be, first person, right? Or I want this to be a historical context, or, and you can continue to iterate that on and on and on. And by the time you get to the end of it, you could have 4 or 5 different variations from that original, yes, context, tone, style, seed words, all of those different things from that original passage. And it can get so far from the original passage that it's almost impossible to get back to or be able to prove that it came from that original passage. So how do you give credit to that original author or even prove that it came from that original author? So I agree. I think those are going to be really interesting. And I think some of the faculty at the university, those are some of the things that they worry about, their intellectual property.
The
Yeah,
flip side of that on the faculty side, if I may real quick, is that it could make some of their materials actually accessible to people who otherwise wouldn't be able to read it.
I completely agree.
Absolutely.
But by the same token, if it's their intellectual property, do others have the right to take it and iterate it, and then maybe it gets misinterpreted? Yes, it's now explainable, but we also know that ChatGPT can misinterpret, right? If you ask it for a different tone, or you said 8th grade level, and now you understand it, but it really isn't what the original meaning was. And so you can understand how, an original author might feel that it could misinterpret or actually misexplain what their original research was.
Which is very much the argument that's happening on the art side of things. If you use some of the art tools where the artists are up in arms, hey, wait, you trained that on my art.
Right.
I didn't give you rights to do that. That hand is my hand. I drew that hand, or things like that. So they're seeing bits and pieces of things. So very much, these are interesting questions to be addressed.
And the other thing you need to look at is the policy of the product itself. Like ChatGPT has its own policy about whether you own the products that it outputs.
Right.
So you have to also read the policy of the products, just like with any applications that we're using. So just be aware that, ChatGPT basically says you own what the responses are. But I would encourage you to read the policies as well. If you ever decide that you want to engage in litigation or whatever, make sure that you know what the policies are on both ends. So
that's a really good point, Brenda. And each one of these AI tools serves a different purpose. Some of them are built on top of a foundation of another large language model, like OpenAI, ChatGPT. So one of the things that you have to keep in mind too, as you go out and explore some of these different tools and try to figure out how to use them in whatever your environment is, where did this tool come from, right? What is its foundation behind how it's built? We've talked a lot about ChatGPT, and it may feel like that is the only thing out there because we've talked so much about it. It just seems to be the more hot topic, for lack of a better voice there. But there are a lot of other tools out there that you can use in a variety of different industries. And we created the Padlet. I haven't looked in a moment, so hopefully people have added some more resources to that. But for the sake of time, we only have about 15 minutes left in the session today. So I thought maybe we could pause on the conversation, and then maybe if each one of you wants to share one or two of your favorite tools, you don't necessarily have to screen share if you don't have the setup right now to do that, but at least talk about one of the tools that that you're going to share or put on the Padlet. That would be great. I don't know who wants to go first.
Rudy, you were talking about a tool earlier that you use for research, I think.
Yeah, there's one that's free, and then there's one that's just a little bit better, but it's a pay for. And so the free one is called Elicit, and it does essentially a lit review for you. And so one of the things that I like about it, it's basically Google Scholar that is narrow. But it uses AI, narrows the search to just the articles that are relevant to your search terms, and also looks at the opposite side of your research. So for my graduate students, oftentimes what I find is they are looking for only the research that supports their argument, and they're never trying to look for any research that might go against. And the way you go into Google Scholar, it just kind of gives you, if you put in the search terms you're looking for, it only gives you those articles. So, and then Cite, which is the pay for, does it even better. And it really provides a nice list out of the opposing articles that go against the research, those articles that might say, for instance, that, let's say problem-based learning is not effective. And so that's a really positive way then to be able to look at both sides of something. And so I use those, and so I thought I would share those. Another one that we use at UNT is called PackBack. I'm not trying to sell anybody on PackBack. I just want to explain the AI behind it. And what it does is I use it in my biology 11-12. We have about 250 students in that online course. I cannot manage a discussion in that course very well, and so I pay for this package that manages the discussion. And what the AI does is before a student can post their discussion, their writing, it coaches them, and it actually helps them with their grammar. So the AI says something like, you're going to need to include a citation here. Did you consider that this doesn't apply to the prompt? So it basically it elevates what their response is going to be, and it takes that time, that coaching time, out of my responsibility and puts it to an AI. So there are tools like that are out there. There's another product that's called Deep Dive. Feedback Fruits has a product that's similar to that for English, where it kind of does a initial review of a long form paper and kind of does the initial grading, so that by the time it gets to the professor, then they can look at the higher order stuff instead of just constantly, doing grammar checks and things like that. So there are AI tools that can benefit, that allow the faculty member to look at the higher end and the higher order and take some of those lower end level skills and give them to the AI.
I see somebody just posted future tools in the chat. I was going to recommend that one. Check it out, because you can actually search through future tools based on a topic. So if you want to look for AI that does podcasting or imagery or different things, it'll actually bring those up for you. So if you're having a hard time finding certain tools, check out future tools. So thank you for that. There's all kinds of things. Like I found one called Hello History. You can have a chat with a historical figure in history asking questions. There's a lot of products out there too now. I'm going to put this in the chat so you can see it. There's a like slides AI, which will create
Mhm.
presentations for you very quickly. There's another one called Tome that will do the same thing. I saw a great demo this morning on an AI called Runway AI, which will create a video for you just based on a few text words. It's just amazing. I'm going to put that in here too, so y'all can check it out. I will also share later part of a Wakelet site that I've created as well that has other generative and AI applications, but there's a lot that is out there to share. There's also, if you haven't seen Synthesia, it is an avatar where you can type in whatever you want it to say, and they look like real people. They'll talk. There's another one called DID where you can take a picture of yourself and turn it into an avatar and, put the text in and it will speak for you. And so there's a lot of different ones. Another one that's really interesting is one called Be My Eyes. I don't know if you've heard about it, but what it does is it actually helps people who are vision impaired. They can take this app on their phone and point it at any object, and it recognizes images, and it will speak to them and tell them what those images are and give them information about those images, which is really cool. So, and there's of course a lot of things that probably we've all been using that you didn't really know was using AI in the background, like Duolingo, Quizlet. A lot of us have been using Quizlet for a while. It uses AI. Dragon Naturally Speaking uses AI in the background. Formative uses AI. So there are things out there that we already know about, but probably didn't really realize that these things were going on in the background. So those are a couple of the products that I've come across.
Great, thanks. Chris, do you have one that you want to share?
Yeah,
Hang on, Chris, just real quick.
Yeah.
And Kelly, I see a lot of people putting them in the chat. Do we want to encourage them to add it to the Padlet?
Absolutely. I'll drop the link in there again for the Padlet, but definitely put your tools there so that we all have a place to follow up.
Sorry, Chris.
So no worries. So as much as I love a good app, I spend most of my time actually playing with the tool. So I'm going to give you some use cases that using ChatGPT 3, which you said is the free version. It's basically frozen in time. It knows the world up to 2001. Anything after 2001, it's truly hallucinating. ChatGPT 4 though, it goes beyond that. So, but you're going to have to pay for that. That all being said, use cases. Well, first of all, I'd say, and this is something I can share later. We'll have an ability to put some links up, and I have a document. I need to just put a front end on it, but some professional development that you could give your own faculty, because this is a thing that's not going away, and there's a lot of opinion around it, and a lot of that opinion is coming from people who've never played with it, never touched it, never seen what it could do. And so we saw that immediately within our own faculty. And so a colleague of mine and we put together basically 2.5 hours of PD that would basically walk our faculty through the use of ChatGPT and GTP and see what it can do. And so we have a whole protocol that we used with that, as well as then understanding how well it works. So here's a prompt in one of our courses. Here are 3 student responses. And then here is Chris's, sitting down with chat and going through an iterative process to have it write a response, mix these up, have the teachers grade them, and trying to figure out what's what. And we did that with a couple of different prompts. So I have all of that and I'm happy to share that, but it's a protocol that we went through and it worked really well because it immediately changed people's views because they now had hands-on experience. There's a time and place for multiple choice tests. I absolutely hate them. They're a pain to make. They don't really tell you a whole lot, but they can actually be a great self-check for a student on just not straight up knowledge. But they're cumbersome to make and don't give you much value. That being said, with ChatGPT, you can actually go in and give it a prompt. I need a 10-question quiz on mitosis. Or actually, I want a 10-question quiz that compares mitosis and meiosis, 2 things that students always get mixed up. I'm going to put these 2 things together, and you're going to have to figure out what's what. It will create that for you. You can tell it what format you want it in, and it gives it to you. I want 5 responses. I want 4 responses. I don't want it to be multiple choice. I want it to be, So some other format, short answer. There's a essay. You can tell it what you want, and it generates it. Now the key is you got to go back and look at it real quick. It'll even give you the answers. It'll give you the answer key. You want to go back and look at it and make sure it didn't hallucinate. But I have found that, in just spot checking around, with chemistry or with biology, that's my background, and it gave me really quick something I could say, what, I've got some students who are struggling. Here's some here's 50 questions on a particular topic. I can throw it in the Canvas and have it give me, just randomly pill 10 each time. And the kids can just go and play with that, go through it and practice it. Leveled tasks. So it's one of the things where you might need to have, you have students working on different levels. You have this task. You can have it actually develop 4 different levels to this task, or 3 different levels for this particular learning task. And then finally, programming. I do some programming, but I don't have time. That's not what I do. And I don't do it enough. So really rusty, but to sit down and say, hey, here's my problem, chat. I need this. I need some code in Python that will do these things. And it will generate that for you. Now you got to know what to do with it after that. So if you don't know what to do with it after that, you're out of luck. So you have to know some programming to be able to make that work. But it will write pretty decent code if you give it very explicit instructions. So if you know how to give those instructions in a way that you might give it to an actual programmer, it will generate the code for you that is actually quite usable. You may have to go ahead and massage it a little bit with libraries and stuff, but it's a very useful tool that way. So there's a lot, what I do, I went from, here's one last one for you guys, course design. You got a course in, we're going to do a chemistry course. I need a Texas, a standard. So go for the Texas TEKS. I want it to be chemistry, 10th grade. It's going to be a 20-week course. And I need to have an A and a B. Basically, it's going to be a full year taught in 20 weeks. Pace it for me. I want to have, maybe I want to have 8 units go. And it will go and literally outline that for you. Then from there, and someone mentioned this before, and I don't think any of us actually brought it up, it's an iterative tool. I can take what it responds. I can then say, okay, now do this, now do that. And it will actually build out, okay, I need you now to build out unit 1 for me. Unit 1 builds out unit 1. I want to have, 5 submodules in unit 1. Here are your 5 submodules. It'll literally build that out for you. But in the end, you as the human have to go back and make sure that it's not hallucinating on that, and it didn't just give you something, that it just made up on a whim. I find that when you are really explicit about the things you're wanting to get in, there's a trick to the prompt engineering. That's the term that probably none of us actually knew existed until last November. But prompt engineering, when you get good at that, you can actually get decent results from the tool. So apps, I love them. I'm going to go play with these apps, but that's how we've been playing with it here in Lewisville.
Chris, that's great. You guys, this has been such a phenomenal conversation today. We really, really appreciate everything that you have shared. I am attempting to share my screen, but it looks like it's not actually showing anything. Are you all seeing anything?
Yes.
Oh, you are? Okay, it's just not giving me the highlight. Wonderful. Again, as you have some time and as you decide you are ready to take the baby steps to explore, go to the Padlet, add the tools that you find and the ways that you're using them. Explore the Padlet, find new tools that you can use yourself along the way. So today has been, again, phenomenal. I really enjoyed the conversation. I feel like we could sit here and talk for hours on end, but unfortunately we all have our other jobs that we have to go to. Definitely go to the TxDLA website, check out the webinar for next month and get registered. Again, we also have August's set up so that you can go in there as well. And it's under the webinars button here. Join us in the membership. There are all sorts of phenomenal tools that you have available, and none of this would be possible without our sponsors. So I have to do a shout out and thank all of our fantastic sponsors for all that they do for us, not only for these events, but materials and information that they share throughout the year that we're able to pass on through our social environments, through our professional development and whatnot. So with that, that kind of wraps up today's session. We hope you learned some new things. We hope you're ready to go out and explore some new tools if you haven't tried them out already. And again, I'll just kind of reiterate something that Chris said. The bottom line when you are using any of these tools is how you ask the question, talk to the tool, type to the tool, the way you would truly explain something to someone else so that you get what you need, right? If you aren't clear with what you're asking for, chances are you are not going to get what you need. Be aware. Pay attention to the information. Do know that some of these tools hallucinate. That is the real term for what they do. Always keep the human aspect in it and go back and review what is shared before you go out in the world and share what you have gathered from artificial intelligence. And with that, that's it for today. Thank you all again for joining us, and we hope to see you next month. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.